It started on an ordinary afternoon in downtown Geneva, Switzerland, in a quiet café tucked between the cobblestone streets and the modern UN buildings. The air was filled with the smell of fresh croissants and roasted espresso beans. People gathered at tables, some tourists, some locals, all enjoying their conversations in a mix of languages: French, German, English, Italian. Geneva was a city of tongues, a place where borders blurred and cultures converged. But to one woman sitting near the window that day, the sound of French wasn't music. To her, it was noise. At a corner table sat Emmanuel Dubois, a tall, soft-spoken man in his 30s, with warm brown skin and the gentle posture of someone used to listening more than speaking. He wore a modest blazer, nothing flashy, but the kind of attire that spoke of professionalism. Beside him was his friend Marie, laughing as the two carried on a lively conversation in French. That was when the voice cut through the cafe like a sour note. "Excuse me, excuse me." A woman from the next table suddenly turned, her voice sharp and piercing. She had the kind of presence that demanded attention, though not in a good way. Blonde hair tied tightly in a bun, oversized sunglasses pushed up onto her head, and a scowl etched into her face. She leaned forward, stabbing the air with her finger. "This is Switzerland. You should speak English if you want to be understood. None of us need to hear your foreign gibberish." The cafe grew quiet. Cups froze midair. Marie looked stunned. Emmanuel blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. "Pardon," he asked politely, his voice calm. "You heard me," the woman, let's call her Karen, snapped. "You people come here, and you think you can just jabber away in whatever language you want. It's rude. We speak English here." A few customers exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable. Geneva was a melting pot. People spoke French every day. It was one of the city's main languages. But Karen's arrogance filled the room. Marie muttered under her breath, "She doesn't even know where she is." But Karen wasn't done. She waved her hand dramatically, as though she were shooing flies. "Honestly, if you want to fit in, speak English. Don't expect the rest of us to tolerate your nonsense." Emmanuel felt a flicker of anger, but years of training, discipline, and patience anchored him. He didn't raise his voice. He simply nodded once, finished his coffee, and stood up. "Have a good afternoon," he said quietly in perfect English, his accent smooth, precise. Karen smirked, thinking she had won some kind of victory. What she didn't know, what no one in that cafe knew, was that Emmanuel wasn't just any man speaking French. He was a senior interpreter for the United Nations, a man whose entire career revolved around bridging languages, not breaking them apart. And that very night, while Karen sat in her hotel room, probably venting online about rude foreigners, Emmanuel was preparing to step onto one of the most important stages in the world. Hours later, the Grand Assembly Hall of the United Nations came alive. Flags from every nation lined the chamber. Delegates in tailored suits shuffled papers and adjusted their earpieces. The buzz of dozens of languages filled the air, an orchestra of humanity trying to find harmony. Emmanuel walked to his station in the interpreter's booth, slipping on his headset. To him, this was routine, yet always humbling. Every word mattered here. Presidents, ambassadors, ministers, they all relied on people like him to ensure understanding across borders. A single mistranslation could shift the meaning of a policy or spark confusion in delicate negotiations. That night's session was critical. World leaders gathered to discuss a humanitarian crisis in a conflict zone. Speeches would be made in Arabic, French, Russian, Spanish, Chinese, and English, and Emmanuel would be one of the key interpreters, ensuring nothing was lost in translation. The room hushed as the Secretary General stepped up to the podium. Cameras rolled. The world watched live. And as soon as the first French delegate began to speak, Emmanuel's voice flowed into the headsets of hundreds of leaders and journalists. His English translation was clear, powerful, and commanding. There was no hesitation, no gibberish. Every word carried precision, authority, and dignity. The same man mocked for speaking French in a cafe just hours earlier was now the bridge between nations. Meanwhile, fate had a way of circling back. Unbeknownst to Emmanuel, Karen was in Geneva not just as a tourist, but as part of a global business forum trip with her company. And that night, out of curiosity, or perhaps arrogance. She attended the public gallery session of a UN assembly. She sat in the balcony, arms folded, a dismissive look on her face. She wasn't impressed by the grandeur nor the seriousness of the discussions. She whispered complaints to the colleague beside her. This is all just talk, total waste of money. But then something caught her attention. As the French delegate began to speak, she heard a familiar voice echo through her headset. Smooth, confident, commanding. She froze. She knew that voice. Her eyes widened as she looked down toward the interpreter booths, scanning the glass panels. And there he was, Emmanuel, the man she had berated in the café, speaking fluently, confidently, his voice filling the chamber, translating for leaders of the free world. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. The man she had mocked for gibberish was the very reason she could now understand the speech at all. Without him, she'd be lost in a sea of foreign words. Her face drained of color. She slouched back in her chair, silent for the first time all day. For Emmanuel, it wasn't about revenge. He didn't even see her up there. His focus was on the mission, the responsibility to connect nations through words. But for Karen, the humiliation was unforgettable. By the end of the session, applause filled the chamber as leaders praised the clarity of translations that allowed dialogue to move forward. Cameras panned across the interpreters' booths. For a fleeting moment, Emmanuel's face appeared on the big screen in the gallery. Karen sank in her seat. There was no escaping it now. Everyone could see the man she had mocked wasn't just speaking French. He was speaking to the world. The next morning, back at the café, Emmanuel returned for his usual coffee. The barista smiled warmly, clearly proud to have seen him on television. Monsieur Dubois, you were incredible last night. Merci for what you do. He nodded humbly, replying in French. Merci. C'est mon honneur. And though Karen wasn't there, the memory lingered in the cafe walls. A reminder to every ear that heard her tirade. Ignorance is loud, but truth speaks louder. Language is not gibberish. It's culture, history, and identity. Mocking someone for speaking their language doesn't reveal their weakness. It reveals yours. And sometimes the person you underestimate for their words might just be the one holding the microphone that carries across the world.